The door rattled as tenants pounded, and Emma Brooks said, "The keys don't work," while her breath hitched like a snapped string. Victor Hale stood calm, smiling as if nothing had cracked. Sirens screamed in the distance as Maya Chen said, "Emma, something's wrong," her eyes fixed on the paper lease like it might confess. A child cried in the stairwell, and the hallway reeked of fresh paint and panic. Daniel Ortiz whispered to Victor, "We should go," but Victor said, "We deliver tomorrow, relax." A building manager shouted that no units existed under those numbers. Phones lit with bounced transfers and undeliverable emails. Emma said, "You promised me a move-in today," her voice scraping the edge of disbelief. Victor said, "There must be a clerical error," while his hand slid into his coat. Maya said, "Show us the deed," and the crowd surged like a wave. A shutter rolled down over the leasing office window with a metallic sting. Emma pressed her forehead to the glass and said, "Please, tell me this isn't a trick." The lock clicked. Footsteps fled. The illusion shattered. The police tape went up as dawn thinned into a colorless morning, and Emma said, "I paid first and last," her words folding in her mouth like paper. Maya said, "We traced the company already tapping," while a chilly wind lifted the corner of a discarded lease. Victor's name glowed on a brochure that promised rooftop gardens and concierge smiles. Emma said, "I sold my couch for this," and the ache sat heavy in her chest. A maintenance worker shrugged and said he'd never heard of those unit numbers. Linda lingered near the door, eyes lowered as if the floor might offer alibis. Daniel was nowhere, just a rumor of expensive cologne near the stairwell. Olivia stared at the blank mailbox slots and said, "He told me we'd be neighbors." Emma steadied herself, gathered her scattered receipts and said, "No more waiting." The cold morning made every breath a verdict, and the building kept its secrets. They gathered at a coffee shop that smelled like burnt sugar and resolve. Emma said, "If the company is real, it has a paper trail." Maya said, "Shell filings, burner sites, mirrored numbers," and her voice clicked with purpose. Olivia wiped mascara from her cheek and said, "He called me special." The barista turned the music down as their whispers sharpened. Emma unfolded bank screenshots and felt heat in her throat. Maya said, "We map every transaction and find the choke point." A receipt showed a payment routed through a consulting firm that no one could name. Emma said, "That's his shadow," and the table went still. Outside, traffic moved like nothing had broken. Inside, the plan began to breathe. The registrar's office hummed with stale air and fluorescent fatigue. Emma said, "We're looking for property records," and the clerk sighed like he'd seen too many dreams misfiled. Maya said, "Cross-check the parcel IDs," skimming a monitor that lagged by a beat. The database coughed up nothing for the units in their leases. Emma felt the bottom drop again. The clerk said, "Numbers like these are placeholders," and the word echoed. Olivia whispered that Victor sent her a photo from a rooftop she now knew was someone else's. Emma said, "He built a mirage," and the screen's glow drained the room of color. Maya said, "We need someone who will push harder." The hallway stretched long and lifeless as they stepped back into it. Detective Grant Miller met them in a corridor that smelled of rain and toner. He said, "Tell me what happened," and the words felt like a hinge turning. Emma laid out the payments and the keys that fit nothing. Maya said, "We've linked a consulting firm and a shuttered LLC," and her tone cut clean. Grant said, "I've heard his name," and a tension line drew across his brow. Olivia said, "He promised me we'd watch sunsets from the roof." The detective said, "Trust is the currency he spends." Emma steadied her voice and said, "I want it back." Grant nodded once and said, "Then we start with the accomplice." The corridor lights hummed, and somewhere a printer started, like a small mechanical oath. Emma sat on the floor of her small apartment, boxes stacked like tombstones around her. She said, "This was supposed to be my start," her voice shaking. Maya crouched beside her and said, "He saw your hope and sold it back to you." Emma pressed her palms to her face, recalling how Victor had smiled as he promised safety. Olivia said, I believed him too, and her tears marked the floorboards. Maya's phone buzzed with another dead number, and she cursed under her breath. Emma said, I worked double shifts for this deposit. The room felt like a confession booth where every word was guilt. Olivia said, he promised me light, and I sit in shadows. Emma's shoulders stiffened, and she whispered, no one will ever see me as more than a fool. Maya said, that's not true, Emma. This story isn't done. Emma walked through her old neighborhood, past the deli where she once counted change for coffee. She said, I thought I was moving up, her voice thin against the winter air. The neon flickered, echoing nights she had dreamt of better things. Maya said, he picked you because you wanted more than scraps. Emma paused at the window of a jewelry store and said, I never even let myself want these things. Olivia followed, hood pulled tight, and said, he knew every weak place in us. Emma remembered Victor's pitch about rooftop views, and her chest ached. Maya said, he plays with hunger, Emma. That's how he wins. Emma whispered, then hunger made me blind. The city hummed around them, indifferent to broken promises. Emma sat across from Detective Grant at a diner booth, the smell of burnt coffee filling the air. She said, he promised security, voice tight as glass. Grant said, he promised control. Maya flipped through notes and said, every victim tells the same story. Emma's chest rose heavy as she said, I'm not just another file. Grant leaned in and said, then make him yours. Olivia's spoon clinked against her cup as she muttered, he called me precious, and I believed him. The jukebox in the corner hummed a forgotten tune. Emma said, he saw my cracks and filled them with lies. Grant tapped his pen and said, scars aren't weakness, they're maps. Emma nodded, though her hands trembled on the table. Emma returned to her childhood home, a sagging porch and peeling paint framing memories. She said, I swore I'd never come back here, bitterness cutting. Her mother's absence echoed in the empty rooms. Maya stood at the doorway, silent but watching. Emma said, this place made me hungry for more. Olivia traced a faded photo on the wall and said, and he made that hunger his bait. Emma touched the frame and whispered, I wanted to prove I could escape. The boards creaked under her weight, and the house exhaled old dust. Maya said, you don't need to run from who you were. Emma swallowed hard and said, I let him turn my past into a weapon. The silence in the house held their words like confession. Emma sat on the park bench where she once dreamed of owning a place of her own. She said, he didn't just steal money, he stole the part of me that believed. Maya said, then take it back, Emma. Olivia leaned against the bench and said, I don't know if we can ever get back what he broke. Emma watched children run across the frozen grass and said, I wanted that future. Maya's voice steadied as she said, your future isn't his to keep. Emma closed her eyes and whispered, I won't be his victim forever. The wind carried her vow, thin but sharp. Olivia said, if you fight, I fight too. The sky burned gray, and the city loomed, waiting for their move. The cafe buzzed with low chatter, but Emma's ears only caught the pounding of her heart. She said, he told me I was his first tenant, her voice laced with disbelief. Maya replied, he told Olivia the same, and 3 others too. Olivia said, he called me his partner in this dream, clutching her cup tight. Detective Grant leaned forward and said, it's the same script, he just changes the names. Emma slammed her hand on the table and whispered, how could I not see it? Maya said, because he wanted you to see only what he showed. Grant's pen scratched notes as he said, charm isn't truth, it's camouflage. Emma said, he studied us like prey. Olivia murmured, and we gave him every opening. The cafe lights flickered, and for a moment, the walls felt like they were closing in. Emma and Maya sat in a public library, with stacks of documents scattered like ruins. Emma said, every file is a new mask, flipping through leases. Maya replied, he hid behind shell after shell. Olivia joined them, pointing to a signature and said, that's his handwriting. Emma whispered, he thought we'd never compare them. Maya said, arrogance always leaves fingerprints. Emma pressed her forehead to the table and said, I trusted a smile over facts. Olivia muttered, we all did. The librarian cleared her throat, glancing at the mess, but said nothing. Emma lifted her head and said, this web will break if we pull the right thread. Maya smirked and said, then let's yank. The silence of the library turned their voices into thunder. Emma stood in front of a wall covered in pinned documents, strings crisscrossing like veins. She said, he played us like a chessboard. Maya replied, and we'll flip the board. Olivia traced a line from Victor's name to a shell company and said, here's the connection. Detective Grant pointed at a photo and said, that man in the background, Daniel Tayal? Emma's chest hollowed as she said, Daniel was supposed to help us. Maya muttered, or he's been feeding Victor all along. Olivia said, we trusted him. Emma whispered, we trusted too easily. Grant said, this is where doubt becomes evidence. The strings quivered under the air vent's hum, and every thread looked like a noose. Emma paced the precinct corridor, boots echoing. She said, Daniel lied to us. Maya said, he knew where to steer us. Olivia leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and said, I told him everything I felt. Emma's chest tightened as she said, he listened like he cared. Detective Grant approached and said, that's how accomplices work. They're trusted shadows. Emma said, I don't want to believe it. Maya snapped, belief is what got us here. Olivia whispered, he said I was safe with him. Emma stopped pacing and said, safe was the trap. The hum of the corridor light buzzed louder as though echoing their growing rage. Emma sat alone in her car, windshield streaked with rain. She said, he saw my desperation and sold me a dream. Her reflection in the glass looked foreign. Maya knocked on the window, opened the door and said, we can't let him win. Emma said, every promise felt like oxygen. Olivia leaned into the car and said, and every lie was poison. Emma said, I gave him my trust, and he twisted it into a weapon. Maya said, then turn it back on him. Emma wiped her tears with her sleeve and whispered, I won't break again. The wipers dragged across glass like slow applause. Olivia said, we're with you. The engine hummed and resolve replaced despair. Emma stared at the printouts spread across the table, her breath shallow. She said, Daniel knew everything we told him. Maya slammed her fist and said, he wasn't a friend. He was Victor's shadow. Olivia whispered, I shared my secrets with him, her voice splintering. Detective Grant leaned in and said, that makes him the perfect accomplice. Emma said, he smiled when I told him my fears. Maya hissed and delivered them right to Victor. Olivia wiped her cheeks and said, he promised me safety. Emma's hands shook as she whispered, Daniel betrayed us. Grant said, this is the crack we needed. The mask is off. The silence broke like glass, and trust became ash in their mouths. Emma replayed the voicemail on her phone. Daniel's voice said, trust me, smooth as velvet. She said, it feels like poison now. Maya said, he rehearsed every line. Olivia muttered, I told him about my past and he used it against me. Emma pressed her nails into her palm until her skin burned. Maya said, Victor needed someone close to stitch the lies tighter. Grant said Daniel was that stitch. Emma's chest ached as she whispered, he was supposed to protect us. Olivia said, he protected Victor instead. Maya's jaw hardened. Then we tear them both down, she said. Emma lifted her head and whispered, no more shadows. The room breathed heavy with betrayal, turned to resolve. Emma walked into the bar where Daniel once bought her drinks, now smelling of stale beer and false promises. She said, he told me I was family here. Maya said, he said the same to Olivia. Olivia whispered, he laughed with me under these lights. Grant scanned the room and said, every con leaves breadcrumbs. Emma said, then this place reeks of him. Maya muttered, he sat with Victor here, didn't he? Olivia's eyes widened as she pointed to a photo on the wall, with Daniel's face blurred in the background. Emma whispered, proof. Grant said the mask is slipping. The jukebox clicked to life, and the lie felt louder than the music itself. Emma's voice shook as she said, "Daniel was my lifeline, and he cut it." Maya snapped, "He cut it for Victor's gain." Olivia whispered, "He said he believed in me." Grant said, "Accomplices wear masks longer than anyone." Emma clenched her jaw. "He listened to my fears," she said. Maya added, "and fed them to Victor." Olivia's hands trembled as she muttered, "He said I was safe." Emma pressed her palms to the table and whispered, "Safe was the trap." Grant's voice was iron. "This betrayal is the leverage we need." Emma exhaled, tears burning but resolve rising. Maya said, "Then let's drag them both into the light." Emma stood at the edge of the rooftop, wind clawing her coat. She said, "This is where he promised sunsets." Maya said, "Promises rot under lies." Olivia said, "He kissed me here once and called it forever." Emma's eyes burned as she whispered, "He sold us ghosts." Grant joined them, voice steady, "But this rooftop is proof too. Every lie leaves a place to dig." Emma gripped the railing and said, "He built dreams that collapsed under their own weight." Maya's jaw tightened. "Then let him collapse with them," she said. Olivia said, "We believed because we wanted to." Emma whispered, "Now we fight because we must." The skyline burned with betrayal made visible. Emma burst into the abandoned warehouse, her footsteps echoing. She said, "This is where he hides the truth." Maya followed, voice sharp. "Then tonight the truth comes out." Olivia trembled but whispered, "I can't believe he brought me here once." Detective Grant raised his flashlight and said, "Stay close." A shadow moved, and Victor's voice rang out, smooth as silk. "You never learned to stay quiet." Emma shouted, "You stole our lives." Victor smirked, "I gave you what you wanted." Maya snapped, "You gave us lies." Olivia cried, "You promised me love." Emma stepped forward, fists trembling. "You promised us homes, you gave us ruins." The echo carried her rage and the confrontation had begun. Emma said, "You preyed on our hunger." Victor smiled coldly, "And you fed me with it." Maya hissed, "We have proof." Victor laughed, "Proof is paper, charm is power." Olivia cried, "You made me believe I mattered." Victor leaned closer, "You mattered enough to pay." Grant's voice cut sharp, "It ends tonight." Emma stepped forward, voice breaking, "You hollowed us out for sport." Victor replied, "That's the price of ambition." Maya said, "No, that's the rot of greed." Olivia shook her head and whispered, "I loved you." Victor turned his gaze on Emma and said, "And you loved my dream." Her silence burned heavier than any answer. Emma's voice shook as she said, "You promised us homes and left us with nothing." Victor smirked, "Dreams are currency, and you spent yours cheaply." Maya stepped between them and said, "You used Daniel to keep us blind." Victor's smirk widened, "And you followed him willingly." Olivia cried, "He told me I was safe with him." Victor leaned in, "Safety is the sweetest lie." Grant barked, "Step back, Hale." Emma shouted, "You won't win this time." Victor sneered, "I already did." Emma's fists shook, rage trembling in her voice, "No, because we see you now." The words cut the silence sharper than any blade. Emma lunged, but Grant caught her arm. He said, "Don't let him write the ending." Victor taunted, "She's already broken." Emma shouted, "I'm not broken, I'm awake." Maya said, "The paper trail burns your empire." Victor laughed low, "Empires survive fire." Olivia cried, "I believed you loved me." Victor snapped, "Love is leverage." Emma's fury flared, "You're nothing without our belief." Maya raised her phone, every word recorded. Victor's smirk faltered. Grant said, "This is the collapse." The sound of sirens grew near, and Victor's eyes flicked toward the door. Emma whispered, "It's over." The sirens wailed closer, filling the warehouse with red-blue flashes. Emma said, "You can't outrun this." Victor growled, "I always outrun." Maya snapped, Not this time. Olivia whispered, please don't let him go. Grant's voice boomed, police will be here any second. Victor hissed, I built illusions stronger than walls. Emma stepped forward, voice cutting, but illusions can't save you now. Victor's mask cracked as the sirens thundered. Emma's breath trembled. You stole my hope. I'll take back my power. Victor turned, scanning for escape. The door burst open, lights flooding. The confrontation had reached its peak, and there was no more hiding. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Victor was led inside in cuffs. Emma whispered, he looks smaller now. Maya said, that's what happens when illusions die. Olivia clutched her necklace and said, I wanted this moment to feel lighter. Detective Grant said, justice is heavy, but it holds. Victor smirked faintly, his eyes searching for cracks in their faces. Emma leaned forward and said, you won't own me anymore. Maya muttered, he won't own anyone. Olivia's breath caught as the judge entered, the gavel striking like thunder. The weight of betrayal hung in the air, but so did the chance to reclaim dignity. Emma's chest tightened, but resolve steadied her trembling hands. Emma said, he stole my hope, but he can't steal this moment. Maya said, every record we gathered will bury him. Olivia whispered, he doesn't look untouchable anymore. Grant leaned in and said, predators fall hardest when their masks crack. Victor shifted, his smile brittle as the prosecutor listed his crimes. Emma whispered, each word feels like justice carving his empire apart. Maya muttered, arrogance always leaves trails. Olivia wiped her cheek and said, I believed every word he fed me. Emma turned, voice trembling but firm. Now every lie is evidence. The room stilled under the echo of her truth. Emma faced the stand, her voice shaking but clear. She said, I trusted him with my future, and he sold me dust. Victor's stare was icy, but silence chained his tongue. Maya whispered, you're stronger than his lies. Olivia said, tell them everything. Emma continued, he promised me safety. He promised me walls that never stood. He promised love, but it was bait. Grant's eyes narrowed as Emma's words cut sharp. Victor finally sneered. They wanted to believe. Emma turned to the jury and said, wanting better doesn't mean deserving betrayal. The gavel tapped to silence the tension, but Emma's voice had already branded the air. The defense tried to twist the story, claiming Victor offered opportunities, not lies. Emma muttered, opportunities that never existed. Maya said, smoke dressed as gold. Olivia said, I lived in the ashes he left. Victor smirked, they weren't forced, they chose me. Grant leaned forward, voice low, you hunted their need. The prosecutor's voice cut sharp, you preyed on trust, you profited on lies. Emma's chest swelled as she said, we are not your pawns anymore. Maya whispered, his empire collapses with his arrogance. The jury's eyes followed every word, and Victor's mask began to slip entirely. The verdict rang like a bell through the chamber. Guilty. Emma exhaled, tears streaming, and whispered, it's over. Maya said, no, it's justice beginning. Olivia clutched Emma's arm and said, we survived him. Grant nodded, steady, predators always fall. Victor's face twisted, rage flickering where charm once lived. Emma stood tall, voice breaking but proud, you can't erase me anymore. The judge's gavel struck, final and absolute. The weight of scars remained, but they were no longer chains. Emma's chest lifted, breath heavy with freedom. The empire of lies lay shattered, and dignity returned to its rightful hands. The courthouse doors shut behind them, and Emma breathed in the cold air like freedom itself. She said, it feels different out here. Maya replied, because we walked out whole, not hollow. Olivia whispered, I thought I'd never feel safe again. Detective Grant said, justice doesn't heal the scars, but it steadies the ground. Emma held the evidence envelope tighter and said, this isn't about what he took anymore, it's about what we still carry. Maya nodded, and what we rebuild. The street bustled, life indifferent, but Emma stood taller, the weight shifting from victim to survivor. Emma sat at the diner booth where plans were once scribbled, now filled with quiet. She said, "This table once held our fear." Maya said, "Now it holds proof we didn't break." Olivia traced her mug and whispered, "I almost believed he owned me forever." Emma replied, "He never owned us. He only borrowed our trust." Maya smiled faintly, and we took it back. The jukebox hummed in the corner, no longer a haunting echo but background noise. Emma breathed deeply, finally tasting peace, however fragile. Emma walked past the building where Victor once promised rooftop sunsets, now boarded and lifeless. She said, "This was never a home, only a stage." Maya said, "And the curtain has fallen." Olivia whispered, "I see it for what it is now, hollow walls." Emma touched the boarded door and said, "His lies lived here, but so did our fight." Maya added, "He didn't build memories, we did." Olivia exhaled, "I'm glad it's over." Emma whispered, "Me too," her voice steady like steel, no longer fragile. Emma sat across from Maya and Olivia at a quiet park bench, the winter wind soft but biting. She said, "He taught us how fragile trust can be." Maya replied, "But also how strong resolve becomes." Olivia whispered, "We're not broken anymore." Emma said, "We are changed, but change isn't defeat." Maya smiled gently. "We turned scars into maps forward." Emma's chest rose as she whispered, "We'll never be the same, and that's the point." The city hummed, but their silence carried power stronger than noise. Emma stood at her apartment window, city lights flickering beyond. She whispered, "He thought he wrote my ending." Maya's words echoed in memory, "Write your own." Olivia's voice lingered too, "We survive." Emma pressed her palm to the glass and said, "I carry the scars, but they're mine." A soft laugh escaped her lips, weary but victorious. In the reflection, her eyes no longer looked lost, only fierce. The city roared outside, but for the first time, it felt like hers again.